It is true, I have written a lot of technical books about stuff we don't use in practice anymore. You can trust everything I'm about to say because I've written multiple books about Visual Basic. So you can trust my technical chops. To the extent that anybody has heard of Cognitect, you have probably heard of us because of either our open source development language, Clojure, or our commercial database, Datomic. But I'm not here to talk to you about those specifically. I'm here to talk to you today about how our teams of experts can engage organizations to directly solve a certain specific set of challenges. The challenges facing specifically this crowd today, software is of course eating the world and of course finance, and PSD2 is coming. And it's going to change a lot of things. PSD2 is going to create challenges and opportunities for both established players and all of those disruptors who are coming after them. And what that is going to mean is that people who can move fast and innovate quickly are going to win in that space. This is not actually different than any time in the past. It's just that the timescales are being shortened. What we have found as we've engaged in the market is that the disruptive players really need more mature technology. They're trying lots of things, they're trying to see what sticks, but once they hit, they've got to implement something that's going to actually stand up to the challenge ahead of them. Mature institutions need to move at the speed of those disruptors. They can't afford to wait around for the standard way of implementing things to catch up. So the wave that we see is that agile technologies and methods, which are what we've been working on for 14 years now, need to be implemented all the way down stack, not just at the front end, not on the mobile apps, not on the web apps, but all the way down to the hardest data problems. And you've got to be able to implement those technologies and those methodologies everywhere in the organization. Even if you can't use the cloud, you have to be able to think that way. Maybe your organization is fully deployed on AWS. Maybe you've been told you can never touch it, but you can't afford not to think through the implications of ephemeral hardware, of software-defined infrastructure. And thirdly, your data projects can't take 3 years anymore. There's no world where that's a plausible future for any organization in today's market. So Cognitect's mission is threefold. Our primary mission is to humanize these hard problems. That means not only focusing on how to implement solutions that engage your end users better, but also how the development methodologies or technologies or processes empower your developers. They've got to be able to learn, grow, and move faster than ever before. Secondly, we like to blaze trails for organizations. We like to find technologies, tools, methodologies that you can adopt and help you learn how to adopt them. And finally, then deploy those, actually ship working software to allow you to ride that next wave. So, our approach, always, 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 early wins, working code on week 1. If you engage with us and we hit the ground running, we're going to deploy something early. Why? So you can learn from it, measure it, and repeat the process over and over. But third, and probably most important for this market and this crowd, we have a deep focus on risk understanding, risk identification, and mitigation and management over the course of a project. It is built in from day one. We're always trying to seek to identify both the internal and external risks to project success and help you manage to those risks over the course of a project. How do we do it? We have an intense focus on empowering customers and your development team. That's always part of the process. We focus on building what we call anti-fragile systems. Systems that can respond to failure by getting better, but it can also respond to future novelty. This is one of the primary aspects of the way we think about software technology today. It's not good enough to deploy a solution that works on whatever problem you identified a year ago when you thought about funding the solution you're now building. If that system can't adapt to what's going to be discovered a year from now, then you're just going to go through the same funding cycle again, and you're not going to have something that can last in the future. And with these shortened timescales, that sort of response to future novelty is really critical. So third, we have invested over 14 years in some very sharp tools, as I mentioned at the beginning. One of the things we've invested in is a programming language, Clojure, functional, dynamic programming language that runs on the JVM, and its brethren language, ClojureScript, which is the same exact language but targeting JavaScript runtimes, but also a proprietary database called Datomic. If you're interested in learning more about the details of those technologies, please stop by the booth and we'll be happy to wax rhapsodic about all of them at your leisure. But instead, I want to talk about applying those technologies through a demo of the kinds of things that we can do. So let me set the stage for this demo that I'm about to give. This is a real-time transaction monitoring tool that we have built in this case for a financial institution that has to model transaction flows that are distributed not only in terms of the sources of the data, right? There are multiple different systems feeding data into one transaction monitoring system, but those flows are also coming from multiple geographic locations. So the three distinct problems that we're trying to address here are, one, systems that this institution has implemented in the past are either focused on a current snapshot of data or historical analysis, but they really want to bridge the gap between those two things. We already saw a presentation in this section at the beginning about bridging OLTP and OLAP, the transactional processing and the analysis. This is a system that needs to be able to bridge that gap. So the solution in this case is going to be using immutable data. That's Datomic's core value proposition. Data that provides end-to-end auditability and tracking of all of your data over time. So the full history of everything as we go. The second problem is that most systems can't adapt as context changes. We've installed the system, we've deployed the system, and something changes out in the world. New data flows arise, the form of the data format changes, something, and the system is now broken and has to be redeveloped. So what we want is a system that can self-educate and self-heal and respond to that future novelty. And the third problem is that teams are given targets years in the future, and they can't steer the development process as they learn about new changes to that context. So as again, we want to deliver working software in week 1 that allows the team to change along with the changes they see in the world. So if we're going to hit this problem like a sack of hammers on day 1, that's what we're going to figure out. So let me jump over and show you the demo. Now, I learned my lesson the last time I was on a FinDEVr stage. I'm not going to attempt to run running software. I'm going to use this video. Bypass all the networking problems that I was going to have then. So let me set the stage. This system is designed to ingest transactions from a bank and track the process of those transactions from the front office to the middle office to the back office to the reporting and management, and then finally to archival. And the system ingests those through a Datomic-based backend. Let me start the video running. And learns the flow of transactions immediately as being exposed to the data. So it doesn't know anything about how many transactions it's supposed to see, what the path is going to be between these different states. All it knows is a general set of rules that we determined over the first 3 days working with the customer to define some basic principles about these transactions. And as you can see, the system immediately begins to graph the flow of these transactions from the London trading office to the middle office to the back office, over to portfolio reporting, and finally into risk management. But here's going to be the interesting thing about the system. This is about 2 to 3 days of data modeling and then the implementation of the interface. And then we're going to bring on a whole other set of data. The New York trading office comes online and is pumped into the system. The system had no idea that New York trading even existed before it was deployed. We feed it a new set of data. It learns about not only where that data is, but how it flows back into the original reporting system. All right, so now the developers of the system and the stakeholders have a visualization of how the system is responding to bringing on new data flows. We've pumped the one that they knew about in first, and then we attach the second stream, and you can watch in real time as that data is ingested, and the system learns how that data is organized and how it flows together. I'm going to skip ahead in the video a little bit. Whoops, I skipped just a bit too far as the Tokyo office comes online. A third set of data added into the system by the end of the week, and again, the system learns. Now, what's interesting about a Datomic-backed system is that, as I said, Datomic is a database that tracks the history of your data and allows you to go back and check on things that happened in the past as well as what's happening now. So if I jump a little bit ahead into the video, we'll look at what that time system allows us to do. So right here in the system, I've paused the live tracking of the data through the system, and I'm jumping to another point in time earlier in the life cycle of the application, excuse me. And then I can go all the way back to the very beginning, so pick a time way at the beginning, and you can see that the UI is going to go back and show you what the status of the application was back in the early days. So now you can move backwards and forwards through time. You can hit play and move forward from where you were and check on anything in the history of the application. So I don't have a lot of time, so I'm going to stop that demo. But I'm going to go back and talk about what that demo allowed that team to be able to do. So as I said, the creation of that entire application took about a week. First, the team dropped in and talked to the stakeholders of the application to find out what it could about the application's data and modeled a system based on what it could find out in those few short days. By the end of the first week, it was deployed as a series of on-premise services, in this case, but it could have been deployed as an AWS backend as well. And that analytical model that we put in then was able in real time to adapt to those new data flows as they flowed into the system. That UI is not something that the end customers are ever going to see, right? No bank user is ever going to log onto their mobile app and see the data we just showed. That UI is specifically there to allow the stakeholders and the developers to watch the application as it's ingesting all this data and manage and monitor the flow of information across that system. Again, now that we have all that in place, the team can iterate on the application that is built over time and learn and grow as we go. And the UI provides the stakeholders a constant way to manage the changes that we're building into the applications. So the way we view that application development process is the same sort of agile development technologies and agile methodologies that people have traditionally applied to web applications. We also like to apply all the way down at the hardest data microservices layer to allow the same sorts of iterative development. We have applied these techniques and technologies across a wide range of both financial services and non-financial services organizations. But quite specifically, one of the things that we have grown to value over our 14 years is working with very large organizations like Verizon or Facebook or Walmart to bring these innovative techniques and technologies into some of the stodgiest and hardest to change organizations on the planet. And I believe I even made it 2.5 minutes short. I was moving very quickly, sorry. How do you overcome situations when the customer is not agile ready, is using a waterfall-like approach? So we have been brought in a variety of organizational situations where either agile was the order of the day, but usually it's not, which means that our organization is usually brought in to prove the possibility of agile. If I think back to our time with Verizon, for example, we spent multiple years working with the innovation group at Verizon. The very first project they had us do for them was an analysis of their current development methodologies and how you could scale agile across an organization as big as Verizon. So in addition to doing the projects themselves, our team came in to act as experts and I would say system architecture guides to allow the organization to adopt Agile. So we don't require that an organization already be Agile. We're happy to lead them down the path. And we have a variety of use cases of large organizations moving into Agile that we can point to and help with. What is our biggest customer success story? So far to date, the biggest customer success story was we helped Walmart build a brand new system that they deployed using Clojure. Again, I think they deployed it the week before Black Friday and then tweeted at the end of Black Friday, our new system just stood up for all of Black Friday without a hiccup. That by far was the biggest slap each other on the back moment, because if Walmart's online Black Friday system can stand up, then something really good happened. What data security does our platform provide? So remember, our platform is a database and a series of open source languages. So they provide exactly the kinds of security that a database or a programming language would provide, which is to say we don't wrap any of our systems in some pre-baked security technology that's owned by us. We will adopt whatever the security practices are of the organization that we're in. So if that means that we're going out to AWS and we're going to be deploying using VPCs and whatever AWS is going to allow us to provide, that's great. If you have internal procedures and internal data centers, we're happy to adopt the security mechanisms that you have. We work with our customers' constraints, not against them. So we're always going to be looking for the right technology for that customer. What customers do we like working with the best? Well, I've been asked this a lot. And when people ask me, how do you define the ideal customer, they're usually thinking in terms of, what kind of technology or what kind of domain. I like customers who have a budget and can measure the value of success. That's what I like. When I work with startups who don't have funding, there's only so far we can go. Oh, it's week 3, we're out of money, great. Well, it's not really that fun. Or I work with customers who have too much money. We'll just keep throwing money on this burning tire fire until either we're out of money or the tires went out. Nobody wins there either. I like people who can measure the value of the return on an investment, right? Constraints breed creativity, and somebody who can measure ROI can either pat me on the back or fire me when the time is right. But if you don't have one of those, then you can't. How do we cope with customers who use Agile methodologies during development but have a slow path to live post-development? Well, that depends on if they want us around post-development. We like to live full life cycle with our customers, from inception all the way to post-deployment. We have a full 24/7 support organization that is involved with our customers well after deployment, and we're happy to be involved there. However, if you have worked with us from inception to deployment, we have probably affected your ability to live an agile post-deployment life. Right? So usually, if we've worked with you the whole time, we don't have to worry about there being some cliff that the organization drives off of and we can't work with you anymore. However, if we're brought in late in the game, there's not a lot we can do about that, and we try to be as helpful and responsive as we can be in that environment, but you can lead a horse to water, but if it drowns there, it's still a dead horse. Was the Walmart project really scheduled to go live a week before Black Friday? Scheduled? No. That's when it went live, though. How do you adapt data interfaces regarding future novelty? So when we sit down to do the early modeling of a system, we build a base schema. Now, somebody already mentioned schema lists earlier in this talk. For Datomic, Datomic is not a schema list database. It is a flexible schema database, which means you don't have to predefine all of the attributes of your data. We define a baseline set of attributes that we expect all of the data ingress to have, but then, as new data arrives, you can simply expand the schema to take advantage of that. And so, once we have the initial states built in, we can keep ingesting data and learn from the new parts without losing it because we didn't have it as part of the table or whatever. So Datomic's flexible schema allows the schema to sort of grow in real time. And I believe that's now the end of my slot, and I'll happily talk about Datomic's developer support at the table or after this talk at your leisure.